Hi guys. So in this video I'm making some bow saw blades, and this is the first step in making them, which I'm going to describe and show you. I'm using some 0.3 millimeter thick by 20 millimeters in width spring tempered steel. This is Japanese SK5 steel. And if you happen to be in Japan, I recommend you're lucky because you can find this anywhere in hardware stores. It's called Yakiiri Ribbon, and it's sold usually in 0.3 millimeter and 0.5 millimeter thicknesses, and in widths of 20 millimeters and 30 millimeters. So about 3/4 of an inch and a little over an inch, like an inch and a quarter or just slightly less. And I recommend this steel. It's really great. This is the same stuff that most Japanese saws are made of. No idea what it's used for, but it makes great saw blades. So thickness wise, I recommend something between 0.5 millimeter and 0.3 millimeter. 0.5 is probably what is going to be suitable for most people. I like a really thin blade, so I'm going with 0.3. Thin blades are okay in a bow saw, but do realize that you're going to get more twisting. If you've ever used a bow saw, you'll know that the blade can twist in use, and that's both an advantage and a disadvantage depending on what you're doing. But it requires a more delicate touch for sure. So if you want a saw that you can be more aggressive and rough with, go for a thicker blade. But I'm looking for something finer, so I'm going with the 0.3. Alright, so what have I done? I've just taken my steel and cut it to length. So I just measure it out, mark it where I want. So I would take my mark, let's see, I'm going here, mark at my point, and then take a square and then mark across so that I get a square edge, and then cut it to length, right, with some shears or tin snips, whatever these are called. Now I'm not going to do that because I've already cut these to length. And then what you want to do is drill your holes, or better than a drill is a punch. So I really recommend punching the holes, because this is hardened steel, and if you try and drill through it, it's just, I've tried, it's not easy, and you'll ruin your bits most likely. So just get a punch. It's well worth your money. Okay, so just mark. I've marked mine about 1 centimeter or 3/8 of an inch from the end, and my blades, these are quite short. My blades are 400 millimeters, so 40 centimeters. I think that's like 16 inches roughly, maybe 17. I don't know, 16 I think. And these are a little on the short side, but I'm using a very thin blade, and I'm making a kind of small saw for finer work, so I don't need something too big and bulky. You may want up to 500, 600, 700 millimeters for bow saw. Chinese bow saws tend to be about 450 millimeters is the average blade length. So I'm just slightly under that. You can play around with, a bow saw doesn't have to be a big, really heavy tool. It's nice to have a light one with a really thin blade at times. So the longer the blade gets, the thicker it's going to have to be. So keep that in mind. So I'm getting away with a 0.3 millimeter blade here because I'm going to be using it in a delicate way, and also I don't have a long blade. So when you may want to try two different thicknesses of steel. Get something a little bit on the thinner side and a little bit on the thicker side. And you can make your blades in a pair. So you see what I'm doing here. I've got two of them. And when I go to file the teeth, I'm going to clamp them together really well. You may even want to tape them together or something. And I'm going to file the teeth in both of them at the same time. And that way I have an extra blade. Alright, so that out of the way. What next is you want to let's get some of these tools out of the way. You want to mark out your teeth. So I like to use some masking tape. This is too wide, but I can't find the oh, actually I just found it. Usually I use this one. Here we go. It's easier to see too, it's green. Alright, let's remove that. Alright, so I usually use this, just green masking tape, and I put that over the side that's going to be the edge. Now the edges need to be squared. They need to be filed or stoned square, because usually what happens from the factory is that the edge is a little bit rounded off, and you don't want that. You don't want teeth that are round. You want them sharp and square. So let me just redo this because I got a little bit off, a little bit too low. Actually, I'm low again. It doesn't matter. Or does it matter? No. Okay, I'm gonna get it right. I have time to do it. I have time to do it right. Try not to overcorrect. There we go. You want it not quite at the edge. Be careful with these sides here. As I was trying to punch the holes, and I was trying to get it off the punch, it was stuck. I cut myself on the edge here. So maybe a good idea to take a file and just round those off before you go any further, as soon as you cut it out. You want to round these off anyway before you use them. But I'm not going to go too far right now because I don't need to waste that time. I can always do this later. Just enough to prevent any accidents. Whoops. Okay. Actually, I don't need that here. Alright, so this is probably the most time-consuming and difficult part. You would think it's filing the teeth, but filing the teeth is it's tedious, but it's I feel like I'm making progress at least, whereas when I'm just marking out the teeth, I'm just I don't know. I don't feel the same sense of progress. All right, so what we're going to do is divide the teeth up, and what I like to do is to pick a certain width and then divide it into 5. Well, it's actually divided into 4 parts. So I'm going to be drawing 5 lines, which gives me 4 teeth. And then I have to decide how big do I want this distance to be in order to give me the correct teeth per inch that I want. Now I'm working with millimeters. I'm aiming for teeth per inch because that's what I'm familiar with. But I'm using millimeters to measure because honestly, when you're working with stuff this small, you want to work with millimeters. If you're working with 16ths of an inch or 18ths of an inch, you're going to be 1/8 of an inch or whatever. You're maybe going to have a hard time. I don't know. Way easier to do math in millimeters. So let's, get yourself a ruler with millimeters, metric ruler. If you live in the United States or something. Okay, so I'll post these in the video description because they're really useful. I did some math here, and basically, I've got increments of 1/2 millimeter. This is tooth size, and this is the teeth per inch. So for 12.7 teeth per inch, you want a tooth which is 2 millimeters wide, and then 10 teeth per inch, the tooth is going to be 2.5 millimeters. 9 is going to be 2.8. 8.5 is going to be 3, etc. So I recommend sticking to 12.7, 10, 8.5, 7.3, and 6.4 because you got round numbers here, 0.5 or whole numbers, and that just makes it easier to measure out. As far as how coarse or fine you should make the blade, well, if you're an experienced woodworker, you probably know already what you want out of a saw, but I'm going to be making a 10 tooth per inch blade because that's the kind of the best all around in my experience. Best all around size, especially for the work that I'm doing. So it's coarse enough that you can do dimension stock. It's not going to be great for that, but it'll be fast enough that you can rip boards to width or crosscut. But it's also fine enough for joinery, and it'll be able to do, it's a jack of all trades, basically, is what I'm going for. So 10 teeth per inch. If you want a little bit coarser, I recommend 8.5, so 3 millimeter tooth size, and that's, or 9. And this is actually a lot easier to file than 10 teeth per inch. It may not seem like a big difference, but it goes a lot quicker. And if you get down to 12.7, man, that's time consuming. But if you're looking for a coarser saw, you might want your first blade to be a lower teeth per inch, like a 7 or 8.5. And 8.5 is surprisingly, how should I say, flexible as well. You can do most work, joinery included, with 8.5, but when you start to get below 1/2 inch, stock, then this becomes a little bit too aggressive, too coarse. So I do a lot of small work, so I wanted to go with 10 teeth per inch. Alright, so then what you do is so I'm going to with 10 teeth per inch, so that gives me a tooth size of 2.5 millimeters. And so this distance is going to be the distance for 4 teeth, even though I'm going to draw 5 lines. So I go to just distance is going to be equal to, this distance is going to be equal to tooth size times 4. So in this case, 2.5 millimeter times 4 is 10 millimeters. So that's going to be, I'm going to mark, my first marks are going to be every 10 millimeters. And then I'm just going to come back and subdivide that into, I'm going to draw a line in the middle of that, and then in the middle of each of those middles. So I'm subdividing it 3 times basically. So mark your 10 millimeters, and then come back and mark the center, and then mark the center, and mark the center. Alright, so let's give that a try. My camera got out of focus. Let's see. Here we go. Alright, so this is going to take a while, so I'm not going to bore you with the whole video, but I'm going to just do the first bit. Might be easier to go this way. So I start, what I like to do is start with just like a dot or a small line. Try to get that as accurate as I can. I'm going with 10 millimeters, is it? For 10 teeth per, yes. Yes, that's correct. So every 10. So my teeth are going to be I'm doubting myself all of a sudden for some reason. So you see I'm coming in and I'm just doing the halves now. You can't really see this on camera, can you? Let's see if I can zoom in. I apologize for the really grainy camera here. I've not got good light, and it's nighttime. Alright, so basically just go through and mark every, I've marked some extra, I've started doing the middles, but don't do that. Mark all the 10 centimeters or whatever the distance is. Mark each of those first. Make sure it doesn't move on you. Alright, so I'm not going to do the whole thing, but because that's going to take a long time. But square up your lines. So I like to mark them longer because it just helps me to see better. And when you start cutting the teeth, you want that depth because you'll cut past it. I don't know, it doesn't really matter, but it just helps me visually. There you go, that's 10 millimeters. Let's do here. Place your pencil first. Oops. Get it right on the mark you made. Then slide your square up to it. Hold that same consistent angle with your pencil as you mark. Because if you change the angle, you'll register differently against the square, potentially. So I marked the first divisions D. I marked that longer. That way I don't get confused when I come back and I start subdividing things. Right? Now, this is the most time-consuming part, but you know what? You'll be making 2 blades, and just remember, when this thing is done, you'll have a saw that will last you quite a while, and it will be a really good saw. These are my favorite saws, the ones that I've made, because I can make them exactly how I want. Alright, so I'll go this far for now, just to demonstrate. And you can see that on camera, that's good. Alright, so now I come back and I mark make sure it's square, and I mark the centers. And if it happens to line up with the line on your ruler, that's great. It might not. If it doesn't, just eyeball it. Trust your sense of space. You're pretty good at telling when things are even or uneven or centered. Okay, so it's my first subdivisions. And I come back, register. When you're holding the square down to square these lines, hold the square over here, because over here it's at the same height as the steel itself, and so it can move on you. It may not be registering correctly. Alright, so oops. The hole I drilled is getting in my way right here. You can leave off, you don't have to actually cut the teeth over the hole here, but I like to, because when I sharpen it, I don't want, I want a straight line across. I like to keep everything consistent. Alright. So what am I doing? I'm squaring these first subdivisions here across. So put my pencil in, mark a little bit less. I'm trying to keep those lines shorter now because, again, I don't want to get confused later. And if you do this, well, you can make your own ruler. You have the patience. Don't know why you would make a ruler. Actually, I thought about making a folding ruler because I can't figure out where to buy one which is in metric. And not this kind of folding ruler, the two-fold rulers, or four-fold. The old ones that they fold in the center. Those are really, really nice for woodworking. Tape measures not so much because I want a square ruler, a solid, not flexible one, you know. But still compact. Tape measures are good, but just don't always do what I need them to do. Okay, so almost done. Now we just subdivide this one more time. Remember, this is 10 teeth per inch, so we're getting pretty small. Again, I recommend something a little more coarse for your first blade. Even 8 or 9 teeth per inch is a lot easier and still quite good. Let's see. So at this point, I'm really just going in with my eyes and finding the center. If you get much smaller than this, you might need to find a better way to mark the teeth than with a pencil, because the pencil itself is pretty thick. If you're off just a little bit, you can adjust these marks, and not adjust the mark, but you can adjust when you're actually filing the teeth. You can just file a little bit further this way or further that way if you see that your mark is not quite right. And these are pretty accurate. So this might seem like a lot of work, a lot of time, but I'm almost done, and I've done already a quarter of the length of the blade. So this is progressing quite nicely for a 10 teeth per inch saw. The place where I punched the holes is dented. I'm going to have to fix that later with maybe hammer it down or clamp it down, or actually I bet the vise can fix that. Just clamp it on the vise. It's getting in the way of my square. Once I get past that, it'll be a lot easier. You may not be able to see what I'm doing right now. I hope this video is not too terrible. Let's see if I hold it at an odd angle, you can see. I place my pencil and slide the square up. That way I get the right spot. Otherwise you don't know the width of your pencil. See, that's slightly off. I can just, when I file that, I can either make the line thicker give me a cue. Yeah. And when I file that, I can correct any inconsistency in placement. You can move the teeth slightly as you're filing by filing a little bit to this side or to that side with pressure. Here. Yeah, almost done. And honestly, you know, if your teeth are a little bit off, like you got a couple of larger teeth, a couple of smaller teeth, it's not a big deal. In fact, it's kind of a good thing because it can break up the vibrations. That's one nice thing about a hand-filed saw, is you can be a little bit, just slightly better about vibrations if there's a little bit of inconsistency. I don't know. Some people will argue me that I have, you know, within reason. You don't want the problem to get out of hand, which can happen if you keep filing incorrectly and you wind up with some teeth that are really tiny, and that's not good. But honestly, if you're watching this video, you're probably a craftsman, and you can probably do a good job. Okay. All right. So that's 10 teeth per inch. All right. So yeah, this video is probably a little boring and simple, but I hope you got something away, got some value out of that. Particularly my big points at this stage. The important things to mention are: use a punch, because that's going to save you a ton of time, and drill bits in hard steel, and this thing here. So if you're trying to figure out the size and position of your teeth, this is really useful. I'll try to post this in the description of the video so that you can reference it. Alright, thank you for watching, and next episode, or part 2, I will be filing both of these blades as a pair, and I will be, let's see, filing the teeth in, basically, using a saw file. So if you're using, by the way, I mean, I'll talk more about it next time, but if you're using a saw file, I'm sorry, if you're using thin plates like this, then you really can just go straight to the file. A lot of people like to cut the teeth first with hacksaw, but I don't do that on such thin plates, because I can't find a hacksaw with teeth that fine. And you could use a Dremel, but it's just, it's the time saving is not worth it. It goes so fast with the file, you don't need to do anything else. You will wear your file out for quicker though. Oh, and I will flatten the top here. So as these come, the top is a little rounded, and that's no good for the teeth. So remember that before you file, and in fact, let's do it now. Let's do it now, so we don't forget. Alright, so sorry, this video will go just a little longer, even though I said it's over. So let's take each of these, take my little crappy vise. Is this gonna work? I think I might need to clamp it between two pieces of wood. Let me find two pieces of wood. Here we go. Okay, I don't know if this will work in this little tiny crappy vise. It probably might not. If it doesn't, then I'll just do it in a large vise later and let you know, suffer through this video. Wasting your time. No, it's you'll get the idea, even if it doesn't work. Alright, so I do not have a saw vise, so if you are like me and you don't have a saw vise, just take two pieces of wood, preferably something a little thicker than what I'm using here. This is not thick enough, but normally when you start filing, but yeah, it works. Alright, so I just clamp these between two pieces of wood, like so, and stick it in my vise, except the clamps are getting in the way. How about this way? And what do we do on the side? I don't know, like that. And does it work? Does it stay? It's gonna move on me when I use the stone. I don't know. Let's find out. So I'm going to use a diamond stone. This is 150 grit, and my goal here is to, oh, it works. Okay. My goal here is to basically square the edge, because I don't want to cut teeth into a round edge. It's going to leave me with really bad teeth. Try to be as square as you can. You can use a file, that might go faster. But I think I'm actually square already. I just hit the side of the vise with my finger and threw me out of square. So I'm going to take a few more passes. Okay. That feels nice and sharp for the most part. Maybe it needs just a little more. if my channel provides any value, I hope, I don't know, I think at least I can provide value in terms of showing how to improvise when you don't have all the fancy tools. Alright, so now I feel the edge is sharp, which means I've got a nice square edge. And I'll do the same on the other blade. And then we can file the teeth. But that's all for now. Thanks for watching, and give it a try. It won't take as long as you think it will. So I'm already a quarter of the way done. So, alright, see you in the next video.